Inventory systems in video games are extremely common, but how do they work? They're surprisingly complicated. First, developers need to define what an item actually is, like what data is associated with that item. This could be data like an ID, weight, value, crafting specs, quality, and so on. This can be done with a struct, which is essentially just a list of properties we can use to create items. Once developers have defined an item, they need to design a way for each object to keep track of what items they currently have. This is usually handled through an array, which is basically just a list. What's interesting about these arrays is that they're actually always full of items, even if the inventory is completely empty. They're just full of blank, invalid items. They're pretty picky about size, so developers just give the array the maximum amount of slots the inventory can have, fill it with empty items, and replace those items with actual valid items as the player picks stuff up. Once developers have a way to store items, they need to think about other quality of life features that are vital to all inventory systems. Drag and drop, stacking, destroying items, equipping items, selling items, etc. These systems can become wildly complicated very quickly, but the general principle of it all simply comes down to tracking items between the arrays of individual objects and assigning rules to how they can interact. Another interesting point about inventories in video games are that they're usually contained within their own components. What do I mean by that? Instead of coding functions on each individual object to handle inventory actions, developers can create a component that contains all the functions necessary for managing an inventory, then simply attach that inventory component to any object to give it an inventory. We use this in our upcoming game Forgeborn in our item chests. If we didn't use a component, we'd have to code the same functions twice, and that is just poor programming practice.